purpose and a single heart, and faithfully serve in their several offices through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Most gracious God, author of all good things, we humbly beseech thee for the Parliament of Barbados, especially the Senate at this time assembled, that thou wouldest be pleased to direct and prosper all their counsels to the advancement of thy glory, the good of thy church, and the safety, honor, and welfare of all people. All this we ask in the name of Jesus Christ, our most blessed Lord and Savior. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all now and forevermore. Amen.
Senate is now in session.
Messages from Her Excellency the Governor General. Announcements by Your Honor.
First of all, we have some messages to the senators who will be late. Senators Grant and Senator Sands have asked to be excused. They'll be late. Messages of absence. Senator Moore. I received the minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday, March 24th, 2021, to be confirmed.
Mr. President, I beg that the minutes of March 24th, 2021 be confirmed.
Question is that the minutes of March 24th stand confirmed. Those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it. Minutes stand confirmed.
Presentation of petitions. Presentation of papers.
Senator McConney.
Mr. President, I am commanded to lay the following. The loan contract number 5205/0C-BA between the Government of Barbados and the Inter-American Development Bank Global Credit Program for safeguarding the productive sectors and employment. Secondly, the proceeds and instrumentalities of crime, value of seizable listed assets, Order 2021. And thirdly, the Barbados Economic and Social Report 2018.
Reports from select committees. Questions to ministers. Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Senate on matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers or parliamentary secretaries. Personal explanations. Motions relating to the business or sitting of the Senate moved by a minister.
Senator McConney.
Mr. President, I beg to move that we suspend, that this Honorable House do now suspend Standing Orders 45.2 so that the two bills on the order paper may be completed in their entirety.
The question is that Standing Order 45.2 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Standing order so stands suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
Introduction of bills.
Senator McConney.
Mr. President, I beg to move the first reading of the Liquor Licenses Bill 2021 and of the Temporary Right to Severance Payment for Layoff of Short-Term Procedure of Settlement of Claims Bill 2021.
The question is that those bills, so named, be read a first time. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Public business, sir.
Public business is now the order of the day.
Order number one, in the name of the Honorable Leader of the Senate, and which has been assigned to Honorable Senator Ms. McConney, to move the second reading of the Liquor Licenses Bill 2021.
Senator McConney.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, Mr. President, there comes a time when the usefulness of a law has long passed, and we must put it behind us. And we must replace it with another law that is more in keeping with the modern era and how we think today and our values and our policies of today. There comes a time too, Mr. President, when the way that we think and treat to everyday people like shopkeepers and bar owners and vendors with stalls who sell liquor in this particular instance must be shifted and brought in to the better understanding that we have of the value of these sectors today. There's a time too, Mr. President, when the cumbersome and the convoluted processes that frustrate and delay the people of this country rather than facilitate and serve them in doing business with government as well as just doing business basically in Barbados. When this must be relooked and we must re-engineer those processes. And sir, there's also a time when we must make way for the future and allow ourselves to benefit from technology in a way that will simplify and ease the way in which the people of this country will do business under the law. Mr. President, this is such a time, and this is the case of this Liquor License Act, Cap 182, which the bill before us in this honorable chamber now seeks to repeal and replace. In bringing this bill here, Mr. President, we are seeking to put an outdated 64-year-old law from 1957 behind us. We are seeking to modernize our thinking, sir, about how we treat certain classes of business and people. Now, sir, the thinking behind this 1957 law, it was from a colonial time. And while we cast no aspersions on the designers, it was a time when not all classes of people, even at that time, were considered or treated the same. And some laws, by design, enabled, impeded, regulated activities and people that those in control of the laws at the time wished to control. Sir, I am not suggesting that this is the case with the current Liquor Licensing Act, but I am saying that we can very well imagine, given the stories that we have heard over time. We are seeking, sir, to re-engineer complex and cumbersome processes that hurt rather than help the people in business who are actually to be served by this liquor licensing regime. We are seeking also, sir, to make use of technology to simplify and to make convenient the liquor license experience for those who have to apply and of necessity and by law need to acquire one. Now, Mr. President, before I get into the details of this law, I really think that it is important for me to share with this honorable chamber the fact that this legislation didn't just get to this point by drafters sitting. Before we got to the point of legislation, we truly had to put a technical working group together that required different ministries, departments, and agencies of government to collaborate to look at what the current process is for liquor license applications and issuance of those regimes. We had to map that process, sir. Then we had to verify that with the people who are actually a part of the system, that that was really and truly what they were experiencing. Then we had to reimagine what we would want the future to look like. And then we had to create a future state for the process. And it is based on that future state that we were then able, sir, to create the kinds of inputs that would inform this legislation when it got here. And sir, I want to commend the work of that technical group that worked tirelessly for months and months and months. And that group, sir, was made up of the Ministry of Innovation, Science, and Smart Technology, the Ministry of Small Business. It was then called the Ministry of Small Business, Entrepreneurship, and Commerce, but it is now called the Ministry of Energy, Small Business, and Entrepreneurship, the Royal Barbados Police Force, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Registration Department representing the courts. They formed part of that technical working group that collaborated. This government works together, Mr. President. The silos that have existed, that continues to be a challenge that we are working on, and piece by piece by piece, we are able to break those silos and be able to collaborate. There's still a distance to go, sir, but this bill is part of a collaboration that we're proud of. This technical working group, at that time, sir, we considered the relevance to the people's lives, how this liquor license regime would impact the livelihoods and the ease of doing business for the persons who would apply to the liquor license. We considered the customer experience, sir. In looking at what the solution for this would be, we considered that journey that the customer will have to go from the time they're decided that, yes, I need a liquor license, all the way to when it is issued. And so being person-centered, being citizen-centered was a part of the consideration. We considered too also the technology, what was right for Barbados, because there are many solutions out there. And as I have said in this chamber before, sometimes it's not just what's best in class, but what's best in thought for our particular circumstance. And we looked at other benefits that would be providing a legal framework that would regulate both the sale and the supply of alcohol, of liquor, in a manner that was transparent and was fair. And there were many discussions with the persons who in fact applied for liquor licenses, who suggested that the system was not always transparent and they don't believe it was always fair. And so they too had their suggestions as to how we might go about seeking to make the improvements that have been made. We thought, sir, about who needed to be protected. In this case, there are minors under 18. If we look at clause 27, it strengthens the protection given to minors to be sold or supplied liquor or alcohol by adults. And we all know that this happens. We know that Barbados is the fourth highest consumer of alcohol in Latin America and the Caribbean. We tied with Argentina. Above us is Dominica and St. Lucia. This is based on the statistical records. And we want, and this is for persons 15 years and above. We thought that it was timely for us to be able to raise that age at this time to make sure that we are truly seeking to protect minors more so. And we understand that raising the age alone is not the only solution, but it is certainly one step in the right direction in terms of dealing with that. Clause 28, sir, also restates the responsibility of persons not to employ minors who, in the course of discharging their duty, may have to be selling or supplying alcohol. Sir, we thought too of who needed to be facilitated by the process that had to be re-engineered and by this legislation that we are now rolling out. And so Clause 7, sir. Clause 7 speaks to the categories of applicants, or as they say, classes of licenses that can be issued under this. The intention of Clause 7 was really and truly to rationalize and provide the parameters for each class of license that you will see there, sir. Now, this needed to be made clear because, again, in discussions with those people who are served by this, they mentioned that from time to time there was so much confusion. They didn't know which license they were supposed to get, and then there were not enough classes of licenses to fit all of the needs, and as a result, they were finding themselves in a bit of a conundrum. And so, sir, you will notice that in Clause 7, there are some new names for existing licenses. There are some new licenses altogether that did not exist before. There are some licenses that have now been consolidated into one. And basically, you will also see in that clause, sir, an explanation for every single license so that you have clarity and greater transparency as to who would qualify and what they would be qualifying for. So, sir, if you would permit me, I think it is important for us to consider some of the situations of Clause 7. We have the export license, and that is self-explanatory in that it applies where liquor is to be exported. We have the wholesale license, and it applies where liquor is to be sold on a wholesale basis. We have the retail license, which applies where liquor is to be sold on a retail basis, whether or not the liquor is in a sealed container or it is poured and shared to you. And that would include your rum shops, your bars, and other shopkeepers who sell in other retail entities. You have a hotel license, which applies where liquor is to be sold at a hotel. You also have a restaurant license, which applies where liquor is to be sold at a restaurant. You have a seasonal license. That is one of the new ones, Mr. President, and it applies where liquor is to be sold at events occurring over a period not exceeding 3 months. So you can get this license up to 3 months. And this is occasioned by those entities or individuals who want to apply for a license. For example, sir, if we think of crop over, it runs over a period of time. And you had a number of people who would find themselves, if they were having multiple events during that season, would have to go and apply for a new license every single time they wish to have an event. What this does now, it makes it easier for them so they can say, look, I need a license for this period of time, up to 3 months in the case of this seasonal license, and then they are able to use it without the hassle of having to go back over and over again. There was a license before, sir. It was called the occasional license. This is one, sir, that has now been renamed. It is now called the special occasion license. And it applies where liquor is to be sold at an event over a period not exceeding 24 hours. So you're doing a special event on this occasion and you really want to sell event. sell liquor at that particular time. Now, sir, there's also the entertainment license, another new one, which in fact it applies where liquor is to be sold at any place of entertainment. And I share this, and this is important because the entertainment license, it now applies to entertainment businesses where a club license under the current legislation was what was issued to entertainment businesses. So for example, if you were running a gaming business, that kind of business under the current regime may have been given a club license. And it isn't really a club. But really and truly, such a business really needed to be treated as what it is, and we needed to be able to carve out for these specific businesses. And again, this came from the people who are applying who said there is a confusion. I am being called a club and I'm not really a club, and there was considerable concern about the confusion, and therefore there was a carve-out created because there were enough of them that will be impacted in this particular situation. There was a members club licensor in the current, and there was also something called a proprietary club. So you had a members club and then you had a proprietary club. Now, sir, if we go back to 1957 thinking, I leave it to the imagination of this honorable chamber as to some distinctions that may have been made in the situation there. But what this legislation now does is that we have consolidated. And there is now only one members club, and that is for a genuine members club, and not other variations of it that had been really a fiction, or perhaps, sir, another way of creating a restriction to certain activities and people who would apply. We thought, sir, also about what needed to be kept and what needed to be changed. Now, sir, we recognize that an important contributor to the hassle of getting a liquor license was that it was caught up in the court system. And that normally required several different steps. And sir, if you wanted one, you had to go to the court and you got the form. And you had to take the form and you filled it out depending on which license you were getting. You either had to fill it out 3 times by hand, or you had to fill it out 2 times by hand. And then the court will give you back a copy for you, but then you had to walk the other 2 copies over to various entities of government. Sir, I will not delay this honorable chamber with the details, but I certainly could. At this point in time, sir, it required that you go to the Control of Customs, that you had to go to Inland Revenue, that you had to go to the National Insurance, that you had to get a lesson from the Ministry of Health, and all of this before you were able to even get a court date in order to then go and have a licensing session. And the licensing sessions were only done in particular months. They have a specific schedule. So if you miss the licensing session from one particular month, you have to wait until their licensing session set again, and the backup at this point was tremendous, and you had a number of people who were frustrated in the process of getting that license. And so, sir, to address that, we sought to take this process out of the court system and to put, which was the magistracy, as they called it, and be able to put it into a civil system that is administered by the ministry with responsibility, where there is now a licensing authority that would be set up in the Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship that would then be responsible for administering the license. The intention is for it to be done in a more streamlined and a more efficient manner under this particular process. And sir, we thought too of why it is we wanted to do all this. We wanted to solve people's problems with liquor licenses. We wanted to ease their experience, make it easy, affordable, safe, and efficient for them. We wanted to save people time because there was a whole lot of running around that was required and a whole lot of time wasting and time waiting that was a part of this process. We wanted the process to be more efficient on every single level. So those were the many whys, and you will notice, sir, that those whys are very front-facing to the people that we are serving, sir. We also thought about how we would be able to take care of all the whys, the solving of the problems, the being able to ease them, making processing more efficient. We thought of how we would be able to go about doing that. The technical team did a lot of work in advance. And that was in how we decided to leverage the technology to ensure that where there are human touch points, where you have some human intervention that was either required to inspect, to verify, to approve, or to qualify something, that those touch points were absolutely necessary, and that in fact there were the kinds of touch points that would look out for the best public interest. And so things that did not fit those types of criteria, those were the kinds of things that we realized perhaps we can eliminate, or we can put them all together, as opposed to making each of them separate steps for different touch points. How could we then truncate and abbreviate the processes in a way that we are only doing what is absolutely necessary for us to be able to effectively process these applications? And sir, if you look at Clause 8, we recognize that even as we simplify and we clarify which licenses people will qualify for, we know that there are many clever people who will seek to have several of these different licenses. And sir, Clause 8, it prohibits businesses from holding more than one type of license where the terms and conditions are incompatible. So some of the text in this clause is new, sir, but simply put, one business operating under the same name cannot hold two or more licenses. And so I want to share with you some of the areas. It is identified there in the clause, but I think, sir, it is worth us raising. So for example, if you have a retail license in respect of an establishment, a wholesale license shall not be issued by the authority in respect of that same establishment. You have a situation, and it's vice versa, where a wholesale license in respect of an establishment, a retail license shall not be issued by the authority in respect of it, and a retail license shall not be issued in respect of a hotel, restaurant, or place of public entertainment. And so again, it reduces some of the confusion where people say, but can I have one of these and one of these too? And the law says, no. You really and truly have to fit within the right type of license at this time. And you can get more than one, but it would be under different names and entities under which you're trading. Now, sir, it is not as if people who will be applying for the first time for a retail license or an entertainment license, for example, there's no, again, we talk about transparency. If you're applying for the first time for these, it is required by this law that in fact, that the authority shall publish the fact that you have applied, and the public will have the opportunity to see who's applied, what they've applied for, and they have the opportunity under this legislation to object and to submit their objections within a specific time that is specified. And again, it is not where the public will then issue an objection and it will take forever. Again, this bill proposes specific timelines within which there should be a response, because again, the customer journey matters, and it is important that we respond in a timely manner to issues that affect the public interest. And so it is kept in law, and it is held in law here, should this bill pass, that we need to move forward. But sir, I could go through all of the clauses of this, all of them. I am sure that all members of this honorable chamber either have or will soon have the opportunity to read this legislation. But I want to share a little bit about the new process. And remember I told you about having to go to the court and you have to fill out all of those different forms by hand, and then you walk them over to the place, and then you have to pay, and then you come back. And well, the new process is 3 steps. You apply online, you pay online, and you get your license electronically online. In the event that there is a problem, when the various entities involved need to go and do their inspections, in the case of new applications, etc., or there are other reasons why the authorities might need to go and investigate a situation. Unless there is such an investigation or inspection or need for some special attention, the intention here is to say yes and to facilitate, as opposed to creating a blockage. So it is business facilitation that we are really seeking to improve while we are making it easier for you to do business with this government. Sir, when we look at Clause 10, it is important to note that under the current legislation, persons are required to obtain a health certificate. It was believed that if you sell liquor, you're probably going to sell food, and there were a number of other stipulations that were attached to the liquor license, which the technical team, in consultation with those who are benefiting from this legislation, they determined that, but we understand that this step has nothing to do with really a liquor license. And while under the law, for example, you are still required to go get a health certificate, this bill divorces it from the liquor licensing process. And so the applicant still has a legal obligation under the Health Act to, the relevant act, I should say, to ensure that this requirement is met if required. And so again, remember I said what are some of the things that we're going to keep and what are some of the things we're going to change. That was one of them where we thought that we needed to delink that, because that was indeed one part of the extended part of the process. And really and truly, we thought that while you still have an obligation to do what you have to do in that regard, if such a certificate is required, it should not necessarily hold up or impede your ability to get a liquor license at this time. Sir, it is at this point that I would really invite the rest of this honorable chamber to sit and debate over this and really consider what it is that we are trying to do here. We are trying to solve a problem of liquor licensing that has bothered thousands of Barbadians over time, whether or not they had a retail place, whether they had a hotel, a restaurant, whether they had some of the stalls like down in Oistins, whether or not they were shopkeepers, whether or not they had little bars where they had. This issue of liquor licenses has delayed events. It has caused people to invest money and then lose money because the response did not come in time. It has created significant hardship for some persons, and we wanted to make sure that we are easing that hardship for them. We wanted to make sure, too, that we are better able to use technology to facilitate what they need to do. And you all know, Mr. President, that in these times, there are times when you would prefer not to be outstanding in long lines, and you would prefer not to be outrunning from one government agency to the other, but where you would prefer to have a process where you are facilitated to be able to do what you need to do remotely. And sir, it is with these few words that I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Thank you, Senator Cronin. Senator Drakes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sir, firstly, I'd like to ask your permission to speak specifically to the bill, and then also to have a related but yet broader discussion related to the Liquor License Bill 2021 around the economy, and particularly tourism, given that a number of persons who hold liquor licenses rely on the tourism sector. Sir, as the acting leader of government business today rightly said, the bill seeks to repeal the Liquor License Act of 1957, when Barbados was not even an independent nation, and it was clearly outdated and no longer fit for purpose. I'm sure the administration would recognize those words. So, sir, in principle, I can stand and say I support the administration in the passing of this bill, because it does seek to be progressive in some instances, and in other cases, there are changes that are necessary. So the changes that are necessary are, in particular, is the one that establishes the legal age now of persons who can purchase liquor, alcohol, now to the age of 18. Sir, and then it also seeks to, as we have heard, to simplify and to streamline the process of acquiring the liquor license by establishing a liquor license authority. Sir, it's seeking to give flexibility to those who want to sell alcohol for special periods of time under what is now called the seasonal license. For instance, if you want to sell alcohol over just a crop over period, you're someone who wants to play a small trade and you want to make a little extra money, you now can apply for this seasonal license. Sir, and as we've heard just now, there will be 3 simple steps, all done online, and I applaud that effort as well. But sir, I hope that the system that we are going to establish through the Liquor License Authority mirrors the one that was done with the Police Certificate of Character. That is, I think, one of the best practice models that the government can look to and say that they've done well, and is clearly running smoothly, it seems, sir. And I hope it doesn't follow the one, unfortunately, that is happening up at the Barbados Licensing Authority, where people are clearly frustrated on a daily basis when they're trying to transact business up in the Pine. Sir, I hope that the Liquor License Authority establishes service standards and they're actually upheld. Sir, I really do hope that this authority does not go the route of so many government departments where the citizens of this country, and myself included even recently, where we become beggars and paupers trying to do business with the government of Barbados, Mr. President. There are too many times where departments are set up, phone calls go unanswered, and delays, sir, become the norm. I hope that is not what will happen in this new authority that the government is trying to establish. And I'm happy that the legislation outlines very clearly in clause 14, it specifically states that licenses generally are to be granted within 7 days. Under clause 15, the issue of new retail and entertainment licenses, sir, those should be granted in 15 days. And in clause 16, for occasional and seasonal licenses, those are supposed to be granted within a 2-day time frame. But sir, as usual, when we are repealing a bill, I like to go through the current act and give some comparisons to see where the changes are happening. And what struck me, Mr. President, is that there's no longer a schedule outlining the fees that persons will now have to pay for these liquor licenses. Sir, we have a clause in the bill, clause 45, for regulations. And it says that the minister may make regulations, subsection 1C, for prescribing the fees in respect of applications, licenses, permits, or any matter or proceeding under this act. So, sir, what I would want to know is that with the absence of the regulations being accompanied by the bill, is it that there will be an increase in liquor license fees? Sir, the businesses that currently hold these licenses, such as restaurants, bars, hotels, those in the entertainment industry, have been hardest hit by this pandemic. The cost of doing business has increased, and by their very nature, because they need people to socialize, they need people to come together, and that is usually where you find alcohol. Sir, that business is more or less gone at the moment. So, sir, despite the recent pronouncement that there will be no tax increases, areas such as fees, like liquor licenses, though, are up for potential increases because a fee is different from a tax. Sir, I don't know if the acting leader of government business can give those persons who currently hold these licenses any assurance that within the next 12 months they won't see an increase in fees. Because I'm sure many of them would be a bit nervous given the environment that we are currently operating in, where there's low economic activity and there's a high cost of doing business. Sir, because the Barbadian public has become somewhat disillusioned by a number of things that the government says, but then something different happens on the back end. Sir, the devil sometimes is also in the details. And my friend on the other side is smiling. Don't worry, the sky is not going to fall today, Senator Holder. Sir, the devil is in the details. For the estimates of revenue and expenditure for 2021 to 2022, the revenues for liquor licenses are estimated to increase. The budgeted amount for the last financial year, 2020 to 2021, the government expected $1.6 million in revenues from liquor license fees. The revised estimate, however, was about $689,000. This year, the liquor license fees, the revenues from the liquor license fees, Mr. President, is just around $3 million. That is almost doubled what the government was anticipated they were going to collect for liquor license fees. So, sir, the increase can only come from one of two places. The government expects that more people will apply for liquor licenses, and that will justify the increase, or the persons who currently hold liquor licenses will have to pay more to obtain the license. So, sir, in the absence of the regulations, as I said, I can only assume, based on what is given in this year's estimates, and we don't have the regulations here for me to say categorically that the fees will not increase. I can only say that it seems as though the fees to obtain a liquor license will be increasing. Sir, so is it a case then that government is seeking to improve the ease of doing business on one hand, but increase the cost of doing business on the other? I don't know if anyone on the other side can give some clarification as it relates to if there will be an increase in fees in the next 12 months in this financial year, given the government itself has estimated an almost double from $1.6 million to $3 million in revenues from liquor licenses. Sir, what I also found particularly interesting was that the Liquor License Authority is being established, and it is to be commended that it is moving away from the magistrate's court. And now we are going to have this authority set up to handle the procedures for the application of liquor license fees. Sir, but very few specifics are in this piece of legislation for the administration of the authority. Clause 4 states, and this is under Liquor Licensing Authority, it just states, Mr. President, the minister shall establish a liquor licensing authority for the purpose of this act, and the authority shall consist of a chief officer, to be known as a director, and such officers to assist the director as the minister thinks necessary. That is some very vague language, Mr. President. So, sir, we have an established post of a director, but how many people are to be hired within this authority is not specified. And given by the admission of the acting leader of government business, there was extensive consultation regarding the setting up of this liquor licensing authority and bringing the bill to Parliament. I find it strange that in terms of the roles and the needed human resources for the license authority, the liquor license authority, we have very few specifics in this area. Because, sir, without key roles being identified, there's a loophole for a minister, and I'm not saying this current minister would be the one to take advantage of this loophole, but it is a loophole nonetheless, where we could have the minister getting up one day and thinking it necessary to have, let's say, 10 people employed at the Liquor Licensing Authority, or he can get up, or she can get up and say, no, 100 people are necessary at this new authority. And sir, that type of arrangement where there's so much vagueness around how many persons are to be employed at this licensing authority, the Liquor Licensing Authority, sir, leaves room for political interference. And on the other spectrum, sir, is because it has not been articulated how the authority is to be run, and I assume that because most of it is being done online, it's going to be a very small unit. But nonetheless, if enough planning has not gone into allocating the human resources to this authority, sir, you can end up with a shortage of staff and leaving the public, again, very disgruntled in relation to dealing with another government department. Sir, in laying the estimates of revenue and expenditure for this financial year as well, and the appropriations bill, this new entity is also not included, and I stand corrected, the draft that I have, this new entity is not included in the estimates for the estimates in the Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship. So again, if we'd have so much consultation through the working group in terms of what is technically needed, it is a bit strange, sir, that we've had two ministers who, in the other place, want to take credit for the bill. We have 3 ministers of finance, but yet, sir, no one can give us a costing for this new liquor license authority. I find that very strange, Mr. President. But, sir, as I said, in principle, I understand what the government is trying to do with this bill. It is trying to improve the way that we do business here in Barbados and to modernize parts of our legal framework that are clearly outdated. Sir, in an environment where some are calling it the 4th industrial revolution, and COVID has more or less fast track the way in which we utilize technology and how quickly we have to adopt technology in our lives, Mr. President, there is no argument from me in terms of trying to get this process online and making it easier for those who want to apply for the liquor license. But sir, as I said to you, I want to have another discussion related but broader as it relates to this bill. Sir, I would ask for your permission even before I start. I won't be long. But sir, I want to establish that COVID has done two things. One, it has dismantled our ability to earn foreign exchange, along with many other islands across the Caribbean who rely on tourism. The Caribbean is actually the most tourism-dependent region in the world. Sir, and it has also left a vacuum in our economic development space. Sir, and I am one who, I stand on the side of being cautiously optimistic regarding the return of tourism to pre-COVID levels in the medium term. And when I say medium term, sir, I mean within 3 to 5 years, yeah? Sir, the global economy is expected to lose over 22 trillion US dollars between 2020 and 2025, according to the IMF, due to the impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. And now we have a more recent study coming out from the IDB noting that it will take up to 4 years for our economy to recover from this pandemic. So, sir, a lot of those persons who rely on the sale of alcohol and entertainment and persons gathering and tourists coming to the island are in for a rough ride, most of us. Sir, so the question then has to be, with much of the tourism industry being constrained, how are we going to earn foreign exchange? And sir, I will not stand here and say that I am against in no way us trying to manage lives and livelihoods. I understand that Barbados desperately needs an injection of foreign exchange because of the situation that we find ourselves in. But sir, one of the things I don't want us to do is to romanticize too much of the past, pre-COVID. Sir, and in our eagerness to get back to business, get persons back into Barbados, we don't have a full discussion on tourism. Sir, the tourism sector will continue to be our main foreign exchange earner in the short term. That is without saying. We can't snap our fingers, sir, and diversify the Barbadian economy. Because of the path dependency that exists, much of our infrastructure is geared towards tourism, the villas, the hotels, a lot of the restaurants, the guest houses. A lot of our infrastructure, our physical infrastructure, is around catering to tourists coming to Barbados. A significant amount of our resources are also placed in the functioning of the sector, promoting the sector, marketing the sector, and marketing Barbados as a destination. And then we know there's a large part of our labor force, Mr. President, that is educated and trained in jobs in the hospitality sector. So we desperately need, yes, that injection from tourism, given the economic fallout of the last 12 to 15 months of the Barbadian economy due to COVID. But sir, today I wanted to present a few points that paint a different side of the story, a side of the story that's not often told. Sir, since 2012, Barbados has managed to increase its annual visitor arrivals by about 300,000 visitors, from 1 million in 2012 to 1.3 million in 2018. And we usually hear those in government boasting about how many persons we bring to the island on an annual basis. That is the part of the story that we usually hear. Sir, but the average spend per visitor, when you look at the data, has fluctuated. In 1995, Mr. President, the per visitor spend was around US $680. In 2006 to 2007 to 2008, where we had the Cricket World Cup, the expenditure per visitor increased to about $1,100 US. And since then, it has declined. 2018, the average spend per visitor was around US $830. So, sir, over a 23-year time span, we've increased the average tourist spend, taking out the outliers of the Cricket World Cup period, by just $150. So when you divide that on an annual basis, it has only been a marginal increase of $6.50 per year. So those are extremely small margins. As a percentage of GDP, tourism receipts, sir, have also been stagnant since 2010, despite the increase of the 300,000 visitors coming to the island. Sir, in 2010, the percentage of GDP for tourism receipts was 23%. It fell around 2015 to about 19% of GDP. And then in 2018, it was about 22%. So, sir, we now have to ask the question if we are at a stage in the life of our tourism product where we are experiencing diminishing marginal returns, where for every additional tourist we bring to Barbados, the returns are declining. So if that is the case, then we really have to rethink what it is that we are offering to those persons who are willing to travel and are looking at Barbados as a viable destination. Sir, another part of the story, or the narrative around tourism that we don't often hear, is how much of the profits from the sector are actually retained in Barbados. Sir, we also have the issue of the limited ownership base in the hotel sector. Many hotels and those operating in the tourism space benefit from concessions from government. Airline seats are subsidized, all at the cost, Mr. President, to the taxpayer. So when you put all of these costs together and the subsidization of the sector, we have to ask the question, is the sector actually profitable? The net effect of the tourism sector, is it a positive one? Sir, now that we've experienced the fallout from COVID, we are also seeing there's a substantial cost to those who are workers in the sector. Every other week, it seems, Mr. President, we have persons who are taking up.
Senator Drake said, given latitude, but remember this bill is on the liquor licenses.
Yes, sir, I'm coming back to
you
the
still have
license.
to fall within the scope of Standing Order 35-1. So
Sir, I'm guided by.
keep tying it to the matter. The tourism, as you did point out, the tourism sector is an important part of the entertainment and so on and so on. I'm just saying, for the purposes of regularity, just, remember Standing Order 35-1. You love that.
Sir, I will try to keep it within the framings of the bill at hand. But sir, yes, what I wanted to establish, sir, was that, as I said, many persons who hold these licenses rely on the tourism sector, and I wanted us to have a discussion around the ability of those persons to earn a living, and having a broader discussion about the sector and the viability of those persons who hold the licenses to make and earn a living. Sir, just quickly though, one of the last things I want to talk about, because I don't want to in any way abuse your privilege and the latitude that you've given me. Sir, the cost to the sector is what I'm trying to emphasize here. And we have to really look at the sector in a way that is holistic and takes into account all costs. Sir, I spoke about the plight of the workers in the sector, and many of them feeling unfair, and the inability for them to, a lot of them, to get their severance payments. We now also have many who are working in the sector are young mothers, expectant mothers, who are also saying, you know, they're not entitled to their maternity benefits and all of the other social issues around the tourism sector. But sir, one other thing I want to point out, just very quickly, is that when we went through the COVID period last year, and as we continue to do so, the government was very generous and gave an olive branch to the cruise ships to anchor in our near shore, causing significant damage to the coral reef, Mr. President. And recently, there was a publication done by the Center of Resource Management and Environmental Studies, UWI Cave Hill. The title of the report, sir, is Assessing Anchoring Impacts of Cruise Ships in Barbados During the COVID-19 Pandemic of 2020. Sir, and I just want to briefly go through what that report revealed, just quickly. Sir, it stated that from March...
I think, Senator Doyle, you may have to save that for another debate. That was stretch 35-1 beyond its limit. It's very interesting contribution and so on, but I think really that environmental matter wouldn't speak to affordability and viability of the entertainment aspect related to liquor licenses and so on and so on. So I like your enthusiasm and so on, but I think that we'll save the details of that report for another debate that will allow it to fall within 35-1.
Mr. President, I am guided by you, and it is because that you have said to move on. The interesting details of that report will not be reviewed today, such as 3.8 million square meters of coral has been damaged. And sir, Barbados, based on the Coastal Zone Management Act, that offense, because coral reef damage is an offense, Barbados is actually losing out on $1.1 billion in fines because no one has addressed the issue of that damage. But sir, I move on. Yes, that is outlined in the report. That is outlined in the report. $1.1 billion worth of damage to our coastal, our marine environment, sir, because of the cruise ship damage and the anchorage damage done in the marine environment. But sir, I move on. Sir, all I want then to say simply, since you have instructed me to return to the bill, and I will do so, is ask 3 very simple questions. Sir, will people be paying more for liquor licenses in the next 12 months, given by government's own estimates that the liquor license fee, the revenues from the liquor license fee will be increasing by more than double the amount it was anticipated in the last financial year? Sir, what is the cost to the taxpayers of this country in the establishment of the Liquor Licensing Authority? And sir, if you had permitted me to just go a bit further, but still a very pertinent and relevant question, is in this post-COVID environment where so many persons depend on the tourism industry, if we're going to see our tourism product evolve, where it takes into consideration a lot of the social ills and the environmental issues, sir, that plague our tourism product. Sir, I hope I have someone on the other side who is willing to address some of the questions and issues that I've raised. And sir, I thank you for your limited indulgence today.
You're very welcome, Senator Drake. Thank you very much. His Honor, Senator Greenwich.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I want to make a very few remarks and a very short contribution to this liquor license bill debate. It was quite recently, Mr. President, that I heard, I would have to say, middle-aged lady make the point that alcohol should be banned in Barbados altogether. And when she said that, sir, I stopped just to imagine what would happen if we tried to drive alcohol on the ground and make it illegal and contraband. I recall, sir, that that was a tactic which was used in the United States of America during a period that they called the Prohibition, in which the sale of intoxicating liquor was prohibited. As a result of that, sir, the reaction by people in the United States, that reaction was extremely swift. A lot of illegal buying and selling went on. Illegal sales and distribution became rampant. And the black market soared. Indeed, sir, the black market was blown out of all proportion. So then the United States did the next best thing. That is, legalize it, but control it. And that is precisely what our Liquor Licensing Act is doing as well. Legalize it, but control it. And we believe too, sir, that it has to be regulated for other reasons. The scientists, Mr. President, they have proven over time that alcohol can have a very deleterious and detrimental effect on those who use it. That has been proven by the scientists over and over again. It has been shown too that it is far more detrimental to those who are at a very young age when using it. So there again, sir, it has to be controlled. There must be a regulatory body in this particular matter. And so, sir, the purpose of our Liquor Licensing Act is to regulate the sale of liquor, to ensure that the sale of liquor does not become a free-for-all. What the legislation says is that you must have the necessary authority to sell liquor. There are certain prescribed licenses and so on that you have to get for your business. But the point is, it has to be regulated. And so, sir, without a licensing system, anybody could sell liquor. And even more importantly, you could sell liquor to anybody, from the oldest to the youngest. Mr. President, from a social and a legal perspective, I think it is much neater what we have done in this piece of legislation. I think it is much neater, sir, to up the age for purchasing liquor to 18 rather than to leave it at 16. I think it is a far more sensible thing to do. And I do believe, sir, that it shows that our legislators are thinking. In most parts of the English-speaking world, sir, 18 is referred to as the legal age. And today, there's no magic any longer in the age of 16. On the other hand, Mr. Speaker, 18 is the age at which someone is allowed to enter, this is in law, to enter into a binding contract on their own. 18 also, sir, is the age at which someone in law is allowed to make and even to witness the execution. That is, you can witness somebody else signing theirs. To witness the execution of a valid will. 18 is the age, sir, at which someone is allowed to vote. 18 is the age, Mr. President, at which, generally speaking, and remember I say generally speaking because you know sometimes when you go to university and so on, it makes a difference. It's the age which, generally speaking, a parent is not bound by law to support a child. 18. And even when we speak of that age, 18, sir, and I think about the United States of America, I am baffled at sometimes as to how strictly some of those parents take that 18 cutoff point. In the United States of America, when you reach 18, as far as some parents go, out go you. Or you pay rent. You can stay in the house, but you'll pay rent. And they do it, I mean, to the T, the very birthday. And the truth is that children expect it to happen. It is the age where, you know, the parent says, I'm not bound to support you any longer. So 18 is almost like a magic. There's some magic to 18. But having said that, sir, I know of 2 shopkeepers that were in the Marlville area where I live. And they always had different views on this whole question of children underage purchasing alcohol. There's one particular fellow, the first fellow, let me call him a gentleman because he was much older than I was, and I always thought, the first gentleman. If you look too young, you barely look too young, and sometimes you were the right age, but if you look too young to him, he would never sell you a flask of rum. Just the look of you, and he wouldn't sell it to you. Where the second shopkeeper was concerned was different. He saw no reason at all why he should be asking you for your birth certificate, he always said, or your ID card or anything of the matter. He did not miss a sale. He is not going to miss that sale for anything, age or no age. In fact, if you really look too young, what he used to do is to put the flask in a brown paper bag for you and tell you to go straight home or wherever you were going with it. But he never missed a sale. So the point I'm making here is regardless of how we try to be, where this age is concerned, how careful we try to be, we also need the cooperation from those who sell the alcohol. We need it. And we need that if they are ever caught doing this, that we enforce the law where they are concerned. Because there are some who are not going to miss the sale no matter what. So for it to work, let us enforce the law. Mr. President, I might be going off a bit. I know you will pull me back because I know that is your style. But sir, I remember, sir, when I had responsibility for the child care board, I was baffled to learn that the child care board could discharge any one of its wards, let's say a young girl, at the age of 16. And I thought it was wrong, because here you have someone at age 16 being extremely vulnerable, being put out there where there are, I almost said wolves, but she has to look for food and clothing and shelter. And, you know, it took an employer with a mind. Many employers will not employ a person under 18 in Barbados. An employer worth his salt isn't going to do it. So she couldn't even get work. And I always thought there was something wrong about it. The other thing that baffled me too is that we can have a situation where the age of consent could be 16. And here you are at 16, and you can consent to sex, but you can't get married until you're 18. Yeah, if your parents, you can't marry until you're 18. But the point I'm making overall, though, is that truth be told, as far as possible, and wherever possible, we should get our legislative ducks, get them in a straight line, get them in order, that there should be some conformity, some harmony in relation to that period of life where you are allowed to do certain things. Otherwise, our graph is going to be up and down and up and down and up and down. And I think that we should look at 18 as being almost the magical number now for doing certain things. And I was extremely pleased, I have to say, sir, a few weeks ago, when in this chamber we debated the prevention of drug abuse legislation. And in that piece of legislation, we said that if you were caught with the drug and you were under 18 years of age, then automatically part of your sentence was counseling by the NCSA. I think so that fits beautifully into the message which we are sending here, that at 18 you are responsible for yourself, but under 18 we will help you wherever we can. As I reflected on this piece of legislation, sir, I said to myself that apparently there was a time in Barbados when it was thought that the courts and the police were the only competent authorities to perform certain functions. And as I thought about it, you know, sir, I remember the days when passports were done by, inside this chamber, so I'm sure we are many of us too young to know of the time when passports came under the purview of the police. Maybe we're even too young, sir, to know of the time when driver's licenses and getting your license. You go for your regulation test, you reverse in the poles in the yard, you came out and you went up Buckingham Hill. And all the time you were doing that, there was a policeman. You remember those? Only certain people in here can remember those, you know, the fellas with the whitish hair. When was that? But sir, yes, it appears as though the police and the courts were the place where the authorities that performed a lot of the functions. I don't know, maybe at that stage, so the policemen did a lot of desk work. And obviously, there were not as many guns and as many drugs and so on around at the time. But today, sir, it is my firm belief that the police should be concerned with policing, and that the magistrates' courts should be concerned with dispensing justice. And as you heard from Senator McConney earlier today, that sometimes in the magistrates' courts, you can have a whole day dedicated to liquor licensing, a whole day. And that day you are there and you're watching liquor license after liquor license after liquor license. Criminal cases are adjourned. Landlord and tenant cases are adjourned. Maintenance cases are adjourned. And this is something which I do not think at this stage of our development we can afford. This is the year 2021. And yet, sir, the way in which we do business today, in many instances, sir, it remains the exact way. It is at least reminiscent of the way we were taught by the British, or what was handed down in legislation to us by we're doing it the same way. But bit by bit, we are becoming more and more independent and in control of our destiny. I have no doubt, sir, that our method of applying for liquor licenses was steeped in British legislation. This was the British style. You know, sir, we lift certain legislation bloop, one time straight out and fitted it. Come from Britain, bang, to Barbados. I remember an act called the Lunacy Act. And in that act, they referred to unfortunate people with certain challenges as lunatics. That is the word that was used throughout the act. Yes. And we lifted that too. Idiots, lunatics. But now we have changed, you know. Now we have our own mental health act. Put all of that behind us. And so what we are doing here is the correct thing to do. Today, we as an independent nation, sir, we must continue to think for ourselves. We must continue to make progressive changes. I know this might not sound like a big thing, but nowadays, and this is a change we made a few months ago, whenever you were doing a legal document and you had to sign the document, or your client had to sign the affidavit, whatever it was, your client had to go down to the court to find a legal assistant. Sometimes you go down at the wrong hour, there's no legal assistant around, you go back the next day and so on. And they made a change was made recently where I can have another lawyer. They say the lawyer who's preparing the document can't sign, but I can have another lawyer witness my client's signature. Just send, I work near Carrington and Sealy, and I send now my clients, so I take them up myself to that firm, and I get one of the lawyers there to witness the signature. That has helped so much. It has saved so much time. And the lawyers are very appreciative of that particular change. But we will continue to make these changes and move away from what used to be the norm in the past. I'm coming to a close. I said it would be short, and I am going to be short. Mr. President, I recall sometime in 1999, I was out canvassing in St. Philip, and the forenoon sun was killing me. Had about 5 persons with me. And I went to a home, and I recognized the young lady who came, and it was someone I had taught at school. And we had a good chat. And when I was leaving, she said, "Mr. Greenidge, you want a beer?" I said, "Of course." And so what about the other fellas with you? I said, she said, "Yo, I want Heineken or Banks." I don't think she put it that way. I think she said Banks or Heineken. But when she brought the drinks, I said, "But how come you got Heineken and Banks and things?" She said, "My mother does sell drinks here. She ain't got no license. So I have deliberately not said what part of St. Philip North it was, because I'm not going to say it was Marleyville or East Point or Britain or whatever. But she said, my mother went the first time to get a license. And she said, my mother faint. My mother don't like the court. No, my mother don't like the police. And she was down there and she had to wait. And my mother, and somebody had to go for her. And I'm saying, sir, that the fact of the matter is that a lot of our people do not like going to law courts or to police stations. A lot of them don't like it. People see this method where the liquor licenses are concerned. People see it as an annoyance, as a nuisance, as an irritant, what my grandmother used to call a botheration. They see it as that. I run, well, I put it that way, put a town competition in St. Philip. We couldn't have it this year. Up to now, we didn't have it last year because of the COVID. And people are still saying, man, put it on, put it on. I can't do that. I can't do it. But every year, I go and I get a liquor license for that one day that I have on my top competition. I go up to the police station at District C. They give me the form and I fill it out. And then I have to go or wait for a call from District C Magistrates Court, which is now in St. Matthias. The first time I went up to District C, when I said that is in St. Philip, but the Magistrates Court is actually in St. Matthias. I go there now for the license. I go there and I pay. It is not, and I do it myself because I don't want to put other people to do it. But it can be a hassle. It can be a hassle. That license, now I realize, it's called a special occasion license in this new legislation. But I will not be, as long as I'm putting on that, I know the fellas love to be having a drink when they're playing. I will do what I know is the right thing. I go and I get the license. I do it every year. And I've been putting it on when I was in politics, and every year since I was out of politics. And St. Philip will tell you they look forward to it. In fact, people from all over the island come to play in that top competition. So the point I'm making overall, sir, is that there is no legal magic in the issuance of a liquor license. There is no special legal or policing skill to the issuance of a liquor license. This is a job, sir, which can easily be performed by the liquor license authority, which is now being set up in the Ministry of Commerce. It can be easily done. Liquor licenses, Mr. President, can be handled by the clerical staff at the Ministry of Commerce. It is not part of police training or anything of this sort. And at the same time, sir, it is going to allow the court and the police to concentrate on the administration of justice. I said it was going to be short, sir, and I am. So this new Liquor License Act, so which repeals the 1957 Act, has my full support and approval. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator Franklin.
Thank you very much, sir. I too shall not be long, but I want to address this from another angle. Everybody is saying how nice it is, and there might be some aspects of it that could be fixed, but I have my difficulties, and I'll share them with you. You know, from its inception, the Barbados Labour Party was there transforming the lives of people in this country. They introduced things like protection of wages, holidays with pay. Those kind of things were progressive, and they continue to transform society. Even later, the tenantry freeholds purchased that responsible now for people who couldn't have a water toilet, now can have one in their yards. All this is what the Barbados Labour Party has done. They have been transforming this country. But this piece of legislation is under that same, we're led to believe that it's under that same guise that we are transforming things and making them better. But is it? You know, right now, I have seen, and I'm noticing that we are also transforming the way people perceive certain things in this country. You know, like for instance, the vices. You know, when I was a young man growing up, we knew that there was certain things that everybody called a vice. You know, fellas who drink too much, that was a vice. You know, you womanize, that was a vice. You do a lot of other things. You take dope, that was a vice and all kinds of stuff. But it was not accepted in society. People tolerated them because even the people who practiced them, lucky for me, I've never had a vice. People tolerated them, and we knew somehow it was bordering on wrong, but you wouldn't get locked up for it, and you wouldn't let your mother know you were doing it, that kind of thing. But we have now come in this era to trying to make those vices more palatable, renaming them, and giving them a better face to look at. You know, like for instance, we have a situation where one of the vices, call the people who engage in those vices, that vice, a domestic partner. You make it more palatable. You make it easier to access these vices. Then another vice was the cannabis, where people smoke it and you hide and do this kind of thing. And saying, well, look, we're going to even make it more available to you. So you can have about 15 spliffs. Because you understand 14 grams make about 15 spliffs. So you make it more palatable. If they catch you, you pay a fine of $200 and that's the end. You're going to pay it to the court, and that's it. So you're making these things that people consider the wrong ones, and that you would try to steer your children away from. Now we're making alcohol easier to access, and I don't think we need that. We don't need it. Let me tell you by saying I've never taken alcohol, so I don't have I'm not trying to get people like me. That is your choice. If you want to drink, you drink as much as you want. That's not my problem. But I'm saying to you that this society, this government, is trying to make everything easier, even devices. I grew up as a little boy 2 doors from a rum shop. And I think that's the reason why I've never taken alcohol, because I saw how men degraded themselves on the ground. And I said, but that will never happen to me. So as a result, I would be in the shop. People offer me stuff, but you had to give me a plus or something of that sort, because I ain't drinking them kind of things with you. But I'm not telling you don't do it. But right now, we are making it more palatable. You're doing these things to make things, and what you want is to make money from it. You're making the vice more palatable, and also you want to make money. So everything's economics. But let me tell you something. The people who engage in hard drugs started with alcohol. Most of them. I know fellas who went to school with me who used to go up behind the rifle range and get a little drink. I went behind the rifle range, but not for those purposes. And some of them have just gotten better and better, or depending on how you look at it, worse and worse with the alcohol, and then some of them went on to drugs. So alcohol is not something that is innocuous. It doesn't bother anybody. It does a lot of harm to a lot of people. So we should not be making it more palatable. I want the glass. This piece of legislation, it has some problems, and I want to touch them. But I have to give the warning about making these things more palatable for people. You know. No, let me touch on some of the things that I am talking about. I heard, I made notes when Senator McConnell was speaking, and she spoke about a technical working group that came up with this legislation and came up with the way we do business. We're going to be doing business now. And when she said that, I was reminded of something I heard years ago, where it said that an elephant is a mouse made to a committee's specifications, because we ended up with a big elephant when we are trying to come up with this piece of legislation. We've got a lot of nonsense in here. And you are not touching the real problems. You're only encouraging more people to get involved in alcohol. Only last week I was by St. George Church, 2 days last week, Thursday and Friday. 2 funerals. Rev done a thriving business up there in funerals. I must tell you. But both days I noticed that there was, outside of his church, parked right at the gate, a lady selling alcohol. You know, I took offense at it. Honestly, I think, you know, when I go to a funeral, I still have the kind of reverence and respect and that kind of stuff, and I don't want to see people out there selling alcohol. But it is not only at his church. I've seen it at St. Thomas Church. I've seen it at other places where I go. People have parked a van out there, and it looks bad. It looks bad. It looks easy. And people, and the police walk past them. I have a problem with that. I mentioned to one of your parishioners that I'm going to mention it in this debate today, because I was offended by it. I brought it to her attention. I think she's on the church council too, and she said, but that you don't allow it. But you cannot now go and grab the bill and push them off. And that is the problem we have. Alcohol must accompany everything. If you if somebody give birth, you have a drink, and if you die, you want a drink too. And every occasion in between. If your son passed for Combamere, you have a drink. Everything. If you pass for Harrison College, your parents don't bother about that. Or they end up drinking as a result. But, so I just want, a little levity is okay. But I want to touch on the particulars of this bill. And I'm going to read the section 26 and come back. Because we did this already, last year when I spoke in another debate, I said, but we don't send appeals to the High Court anymore. And I objected to it. I told them since we had the Court of Appeal in Barbados, a standing Court of Appeal, because prior to this Court of Appeal, you had the judges who didn't hear the case used to form the Court of Appeal. So judges in the High Court used to hear appeals from these tribunals. That has been done away with. But you still put in legislation, and then you had to come back last year and undo it. You're going to have to do it again this time because you're putting appeals to the High Court again in this legislation. So this will pass. I know it will pass. But you're going to end up doing it again because the High Court don't hear appeals anymore. They go to the Court of Appeal. They hear cases from all the tribunals, the Plumbers' Rights Tribunal, the everybody now go to the Court of Appeal. We are now, that's what I'm telling you, you had all of these people from the courts and every place else, and you still get it wrong. That's what it is an elephant made to a committee specification. Everybody wanted to get their own little piece in. That's why an elephant got a tail at the front and a tail at the back. That's because the committee, everybody wanted something special. But let me now go back up to the top. We speak to a club of employees, and the Act speaks about prison officers, not prison officers, sorry, fire officers, police officers, but it says it includes, let me look at the particular legislation, the particular clause, just to get it right. So I remember reading it. It says here, a club of employees includes a canteen or mess of the defense force, police force, and the fire service. It includes them, but it excludes prison officers. Why the prison officers can't get a little drink too when I'm at work, go a little club thing and have it. So they used to, And I know because when I was a soldier, we had a club, and the liquor used to be cheaper. Fellas love that. So you get it cheaper. Mind you, I have never bought any. I didn't drink any when I was there either. And it says, this act does not apply to the sale and supply of liquor at a club of employees. Why? I'm just asking, why? So I can invite people to the mess and or to my where we have it, the police force or defense force, and we can have fellas drinking because you don't have to be a soldier, you can bring your friends. And then, 2, I joined the Barbados Regiment when I was 16 years old. Now, if this act does not apply to those types of clubs, then I can bring a 16-year-old into my mess and feed him with the alcohol. So I'm asking, why is this act exempting clubs of employees? Just asking. I would like an answer, and I hope that somebody can revisit that provision in the legislation. Okay. I also serve as a member of the Liquor License Authority for District D. So it wasn't only a magistrate thing. The magistrate chaired the authority, and you had 2 lay people, prominent people from the community. Well, that's what it was supposed to be. Somebody thought it was prominent, I don't know. But unless it was a case where you have a new application, it was a seamless process. You fill out your forms, and you needed all of those go all those other places because you wanted to make sure that you were paying your taxes. You wanted to make sure that the facilities that you were going to be serving your liquor in was safe for human habitation, and that people wouldn't be harmed. And that's why you had to get the Ministry of Health and environmental people come and look at the facility to make sure you weren't serving it in the pig pen. So I don't understand why you're saying, oh, you shouldn't have to go to this place, you're not going to go to a place. Well, you should have to. You wanted to make sure that the people who were getting the license weren't criminals, or that they had a certain type of character, and that they will not impact negatively on the society that they were going to be in. That is why we had the police investigate. Because sometimes I remember there was one application where, it wasn't in St. Thomas, mind you, where the people in the area decided to object because when fellows drink beer, they convert it to urine. And they do a lot of that. And they will come and empty that product onto people's palings, because there weren't any facilities for them to have bathroom facilities at the same place that they were getting the liquor. And sometimes, if you have one little bathroom, there were so many fellas drinking beer that you ain't got enough places for them fellas to go, so it was the neighbor's palings. So that is why you had to have the investigation. That is why it took long. And it was necessary. Now we want to speed up everything, make it easy. Next time, I outside of my church and be praying to the Lord. The next thing you know, people are there drinking and swearing and carrying on. So you didn't want them close to churches. So there was a reason why you had these investigations. They weren't just there because people like to make things. They were there for specific reasons to protect the society and to protect the society's morals. But we're not doing that these days anyhow. And you had to publish the application in the official gazette. And then thereafter, it had to appear in the daily newspaper, so the people who read the papers would see that a man called Cappy Greenis wanted to have sell liquor down here. No, you're not doing that anymore. What you're doing is publishing it on the ministry's website. I ain't watching the ministry's website looking for the liquor license, nothing. So by the time you publish it on the ministry's website, that's got public notice. So nobody ain't gonna know if fella can get a liquor license. Because by the time you get a license and then you see the fella coming with the hammers and nails and pound and making stuff, You'll be doing there when they building a rum shop. But how you get to build a rum shop? I didn't even know. Because it's going to be a secret process on the ministry's website. You really feel I'm going to be on a daily basis or a monthly basis or even a yearly basis going onto the ministry and looking to see who putting a rum shop near me? No. What I do, I read the newspapers every day. And when I see the notice and then I look to see, especially when you come in Raw and Thomas, I look to see who doing it. Because that's going to be a permanent establishment near my place. No. But you're going to put it on the ministry's website in accordance with section clause 11. I think I got clause 11 around here. It says, on receipt of a new application for a retail license or an entertainment license, the liquor license authority shall, within 3 days, A, publish a notice of the receipt of the application on the ministry's website or in such other manner as is approved by the director. So suppose you don't approve any other manner. They still hairy-fairy. You know, so excuse me if I'm offended by this, because I am. This seems to be able to, you want to put liquor in people's hands too easily. And you're hiding it from the populace. You don't want the people to see that a fella got this. We want to know. We want to know what is going on in our society. We want to know what's going on in our communities. We want to know that we don't have people coming into our place and drinking. Let me tell you something. You go to the gas station at Warren's. Every Friday evening when you pass there, the place block up. Well, except for the COVID period now. And a lot of young boys with their pants down near the thighs, with beers in each hand. This is what we want. This is a society that we want to have. Because we want to make it easier and more accessible for people to make money. No, making money is not the only thing. No, we got to be more serious than this. I have serious reservations about how this will operate. There was a system in place. The system was managed by the clerical people in the court. It wasn't managed by the magistrate. The magistrate just did the end thing. The magistrate just did the end thing. So when people talking about, oh, you're wasting time, you're going to the courts, and that is a lot of nonsense. That's not reality. Those officers in the courts made sure that you went through all the procedures that you were supposed to go and do. Get the health certificates, get the whatever else you need to get to make sure that you can run the business without offending too many people in the society. Make sure that you had toilets. That's what you had to do. Now you're telling me just put in the application and don't tell the body about it, so the body don't know how to object. By the time somebody finds out, the 7 days for objecting gone. But that's not bad enough. We have these other special licenses now where you have to, they call it a seasonal or a special occasional license, where you go to the authority. Let me tell you something. These special events that can happen, they happen yearly. So like for instance, crop over. You don't have to wait until you hear that it's going to be it's going to be the 15th of any month. You know it can happen every year. So put your plans in place so that when the time comes, you can go and get your things. No. But what you're doing is to say that you make the application to the authority. The authority will inform the Commissioner of Police. And the Commissioner of Police can raise an objection. He can, but it's access to oppose the issuance of the license. But he must do so within 24 hours. You really feel the police sitting out waiting for somebody to come and tell them, no, the police are fighting crime, protecting me from other stuff. So you can tell you only get 24 hours? So all you got to do is go and run and pet 2 barracks in the boy house and then apply for your license, and next thing you know, the police got time to deal with that, and you get a license tomorrow. I'm very sorry. Because it says that if the police don't issue this, do this, it is approved automatically without any objection from the police. So the police not going to be on the P's and Q's and on their toes to make sure that once you hear from the ministry that somebody put in a license, you're going to rush into it. That's madness. That's madness. But we are doing this thing. We are making alcohol more accessible, easier to obtain. More people get it. More people turn and bewitched, drinking the foolishness. All because, one, we are making this a more permissive society, and also we want to make money. Money is not everything. I have a great difficulty with the speed at which government rushes. Look, a piece of legislation that this was not urgent. It should not be passed in one day in any of these houses. A piece of legislation like this should have been published and let the country see what the government wants to do for us. You will know no more better than everybody else in Barbados. Give us the opportunity, give the country the opportunity, let us speak to this thing, let me see if we can improve it. No, but you rush in here and move that the standing orders be suspended for today's sitting so that this can be facilitated in one day. What is so urgent about this piece of legislation that it must be done today? Why are you not giving the citizenry a chance to look at this legislation and say, no, we don't want this, we want that? This is madness. Look, if you don't have anything to do, don't come. Adjourn the house for a couple of weeks and say, well, we ain't got a lot to do, so we ain't doing nothing. But you got to come with madness and doing foolishness. It seems as though they go around and say, well, you got anything to do that near completion because we ain't got nothing to put before the house? That's what it looks like to me, Because this is not urgent. And I've seen some flaws in it. So and I'm not the brightest. So if I've seen flaws, other people who are far brighter than me would see some too. But no, you rush. And I hear people downstairs saying, and they must skip down, we're all in here now. And in the other place saying, oh, we're going to increase the age to drink alcohol. They never had an age to drink alcohol before. So they're just going to talk. You mean you're going to establish one? 18, I don't mind. And like Senator Greenwich here, I have difficulties with the age of consent and for alcohol and the age of consent. Because if a person could make a fundamental decision of having sex, and that's more, because I was waiting around till I get 18. Or so I tried. But if you can have sex, you should be able to drink. So that means you should now be going to bring a piece of legislation to raise the age of consent to 18. And by the way, in the definition, age of consent isn't age 18 years or older. It's 18 years. So even you're rushing to do this legislation is kind of nonsense. You just let it here. Look. Definition section. Age of majority means 18 years of age or over. No, it means 18 years. Because it can be some can be over. No, it's 18 years. But they will tell you rush and do these things and bring to Parliament with a lot of foolishnesses in them and think and give people the impression you won't be able to say, oh, we passed 500 bills in our first year. That's about passing 500. That's nonsense. Take time to do these things and do them properly. I promise to stop pointing out these areas to you because we don't appreciate it. Jeez. Sir, I said I was only going to be for a few minutes. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. To make sure that I don't go over my time, I'm going to turn a page and skip forward. Because I use bullet points, and I missed a couple of bullet points. Yes. What is this authority? Explain it to me, because the legislation does not. I know that it is not a statutory board for sure, because it doesn't say so in the Act. But what is the authority? Is it going to be staffed by Ministry of Public Affairs people? You know, because you start bringing a lot of people into the public service and bringing in a lot of people in public service departments. So this is going to be one of them? And how are you going to staff it? Because while I want to remain relevant, I think it's enough to warn you that you're going about it badly and wrong. The last time you tried it. So I don't want you to do it this way again. So let me so bear with me. I saw a body, I like to call it the new GIS, or GIS 2, but you call it the Public Affairs Department. I call it GIS 2. Not TOO, 2. Because you got one already and you got another one now. I have not seen where those jobs were advertised as required by the Public Service Act. Don't tell me that they're temporary, because the Act itself, I think, is at Section 3. And I got it before me, but I could be wrong, but it's Section 3. Says that the Act applies to temporary and public and permanent employees. So if you're going to employ anybody in the public service, whether they're temporary or public permanent, you have to follow the procedures set out in the Public Service Act. And I saw some of my former colleagues of the Barbados Labour Party go and fit right smack in these jobs. Don't do it with this. I watching. They're going to tell me, give me the job and watch me, you know. So I watch with them. Give me the vote and watch me. Yeah, sorry, I didn't give you the vote, but I'm still watching. And you're doing these things wrong. So do not do it with this. I'm watching. I'm watching. I blink. I take my eyes off the ball. I'm going to come with this public affairs thing. Don't make this a new public affairs thing too. Right? And there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there. Sir, I am not going to force you to tell me anything, but I will speak again another time. I realize that my time is close. And I just want to ask one last question, if you indulge me. You said you cannot employ a person under the age of 18 to work in an establishment that provides alcohol. You know that you can get a national insurance number from 16 and work. So that means you're telling me now that a waitress go be eating. You know, no, I'm very serious. I could get a national insurance number at 16 and go and work, pay my national insurance and whatever else and thing. But I cannot be allowed to go and work in a restaurant, and if a fella says, hand me a beer, man in the restaurant in trouble. You really want to do that? You really serious that you want to do that? I remember my mother telling me she worked in a shop as a girl. My mother's never a drinker. But you are now saying that a person cannot get legitimate employment in a restaurant that sells liquor. Or what I have to do, she says, when the customer says, waitress, can I have a beer? She says, sorry, I'm 17 and a half. You really want to do that? I don't know. We'll come again. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Franklin. Senator Dr. Springer. No, she can bring it. I don't hold them.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to add my voice in support of this bill, an act to modernize the system for the issuing of liquor licenses, to regulate the sale and supply of alcohol, and to repeal the Liquor License Act, Cat 182, 1957. Mr. President, firstly, I would wish to reflect on the close relationship that has existed between Barbados and alcohol through a historical lens, and then perhaps examine it through a socio-economic lens and look at the function that alcohol would have played or served within Barbadian society. Mr. President, Barbados has a long and at times complex history with alcohol. It is credited as being the birthplace of rum, and is also home to one of the oldest rum distilleries, namely Mount Gay distilleries in the world. Additionally, Barbados has for many years been promoted as a country, or as the country responsible for producing some of the best rum in the world. Many of our rum brands are recognized globally. I think that Mount Gay, just to name one, is regarded internationally as a major rum brand. For as long as I can remember, Mr. President, and even long before that, Barbados has been encouraging persons to come here from all over the world to enjoy our hospitality, to enjoy our sun, our sea, our sand, but to also partake and to enjoy our alcohol, our rum. And we have been exporting it for years. Now, I am sure that when we travel and we go overseas and we visit those bars and we visit those restaurants in those overseas territories, and we see our alcohol, our rum, display on the shelves, that many of us are overcome with pride. I'm sure. Sometimes even a glimpse of one of our brands on a TV show is enough to fill some persons with pride. And there's no denying that. Such is the close connection between Barbadians and our alcohol. I mean, one would argue that this connection would have led to the launch of the Barbados Food and Rum Festival back in 2009. And we all know that that event has become an annual staple, not only among tourists, but among locals as well. Having said all of that, Mr. President, it saddens me somewhat that persons will still seek to come in here and berate those persons within our society who would wish to establish a business that retails alcohol, or worse yet, those who would consume sometimes with some regularity our very own premier product, referring to it as encouraging vices and such like. That saddens me somewhat, Mr. President, given our history and our close relationship with alcohol. Mr. President, in many communities across Barbados, especially in the rural parts of Barbados, where there are no large hotels, where there are no large nightclubs, what we often see is a number of small shops, small bars that serve a very important role within our communities, Mr. President. And if you would just permit me, just to make a quick side point, that when you travel across the length and breadth of Barbados, you see all kinds of businesses. You may see a mechanic, you may see a body workman, you may see a hair salon, you may see a barbershop here and there. But what I'm sure you will see dotted all across Barbados is a village shop. A village shop that in many cases sells alcohol. And there's a reason why you will see these village shops all across the length and breadth of this country. And the reasons are simple. I can list a number, but I would just stick to I guess the most obvious ones. And that these types of businesses are extremely resilient when compared with other forms of businesses, that small businesses that are set up in our communities. And they have much greater survivability. And there's a reason for that. And that's because they tend to engage communities. And these little shops, they create some level of community cohesion. Persons gravitate towards these types of businesses all across this country. And to hear persons say that people do it to make money, I'm going to touch on that. But reality that many of the persons who operate these businesses are young, especially today, and young progressive persons who, in an effort to empower themselves and in many cases create employment opportunities for others in their community, they would have risked their resources, what little resources that they would have had to invest in these small businesses across our island. And in many cases, they're not rum shops. I don't know if people still open rum shops today in Barbados. You hear somebody talk about opening a rum shop. Rum shops are the ones that are still there, are ones that were there for a long time. But people open a little bar, a little food shop, a little restaurant you know, and they will sell alcohol along with other providing other services. And even if in many cases the alcohol may not even be the main service being offered. You know, the main service may be food, may be a restaurant, but the truth is, you know, the way we socialize, if persons come to your establishment and they buy a drink, they will normally stay there until, you know, the bottle is empty or the drink is gone. And that tends to keep people within the establishment, keep money turning over, and keep that business going. I'm not saying that alcohol is used to lure persons into any establishment. I'm just saying that it has become an important part of the socializing process within Barbados society. It has been for years, and we all understand that. And that perhaps is why so many persons, even though they may be focusing on other services, food or what have you, they may still seek to get a liquor license so they could sell liquor at some point and to help build or expand their business. And that has a lot to do with what even Senator Franklin would have alluded to. It's an integral part of our culture, alcohol. You know, we use alcohol, we consume alcohol as part of, when we celebrate, as part of a celebration. In a wedding, you see it, well, you're seeing them now around the graveyard. I wouldn't say that I 100% like the sight of it, but I realize it has its role. But it's part of the grieving process. One time you go to a shop, now the shop comes to you. The bar comes to you. But in the past, persons would always leave a funeral and they would gravitate towards the nearest establishment, the nearest rum shop. Now persons have become creative in this time and they have brought the bar straight. Not necessarily, some cases in the church, some just outside of the premises of the grave site. I've seen that. It's become very commonplace in Barbados, but it's all part of providing services, a service that is obviously needed or a service that is wanted or desired in Barbados. Now, just to shift away slightly from looking at it at this a social level, I just want to bring a few statistics just to get a sense of why this alcohol industry is so important to Barbados. So it was important at both the international and the local level. I did a little bit of research and I saw a study. In academia, it would still be a relatively new study, relatively new research. You know, it came out a few years ago. What it said, it was a study done by the Duke University Global Value Chain Center on behalf of the Organization of American States. And it made the point that rum is part of the growing spirits industry with sales exceeding $2.6 billion in 2015. That's a lot of money. With the Caribbean being a major supplier of global rum. And according to the Allied Market Research, the global alcohol beverages market was valued at like $1.4 billion. And this was just as recent as 2007 and was really expected to increase. And further in this study, it was said that, Mr. President, that Barbados rum exports at one point were in excess of 39 million US dollars, around just shy of 80 million US dollars, and that represented about 3% of global sales in that particular industry. Barbados is perhaps one of the largest exporters of alcohol, well, one of the largest exporters of alcohol in the Anglophone Caribbean, in the English-speaking Caribbean, perhaps only second to maybe Jamaica and Guyana. And I say all that to say this: with large producers producing, exporting alcohol and making so much money from the sales of alcohol, it is only right that persons, small persons and communities, small business persons all across Barbados should have the opportunity to make a living, to make some money from the sale of alcohol, and persons come here and make that sound like if that's a bad thing. They make it sound like it's a bad thing for small business people in this country to make money through the sale of alcohol, which is not even their main source of income. And I believe this bill is intended to make it easier for persons to engage in that industry. And mind you, I wish to point out that there's nowhere in this bill that is encouraging, there's nothing in this bill that is encouraging persons to be irresponsible. There's nothing in this bill that is encouraging persons to be abusive. There's nothing in this bill that's encouraging persons to be disruptive. Nowhere in this bill. This bill seeks to make it easier, the whole process of doing business, to make that easier for the entrepreneurial person, the business-minded person who is seeking to empower themselves or who's seeking to provide their community with a service. That's what this bill is looking at. If you want to talk about persons and their vices and their weaknesses, that's a different conversation. This bill protects from that. It makes it easier for entrepreneurial, progressive, small business persons to elevate themselves in this country. And just to get back to what was said earlier, that people are in it for money. Of course they're in it for money. The reality is that COVID has caused a lot of people to lose their work. A lot of people are now unemployed as a result of COVID. And in many cases, these persons who are engaging, who going forward, we know will be using this much improved service to acquire licenses, are persons who engage in this, what someone refer to as a side hustle, not just because they want to make money or enrich themselves, because these people are perhaps people in households where they were five with 3 adults and 2 children, and 3 adults were working, and now only 1 adult is working, and that one person has to carry the load of the household, and that person and the other 2 decide, you know what, we have to find a side hustle, what we refer to as a side hustle, which is natural fact is entrepreneurial exercise, where they determine that we're going to do something else to bring some money into the house because we have mouths to feed, bills to pay, and children to send school. These are the type of people that are setting up these businesses. Not people, they're trying to make money, trying to enrich themselves on the backs of black people, like how some persons would like to come here and have us believe. That's not the case in most cases. People out there so trying to provide for their families, for the children. And I'm glad that I mentioned children because going forward, as we look at the reform of our educational system, we have to pay more attention to, we have to pay more attention to more entrepreneurial activities. Yes, we have to. I remember some years ago when I first went to university, there was a Jamaican lecturer, and she made this point to me that I still remember to this day. She said when she came from Jamaica to Barbados, one of the things that she discovered that there were very few small business people in our communities. She said in Jamaica you find a different business all up on every street. In Barbados we didn't have that. That was not a part of our culture. But now with our reforms, we're going to make that. We're going to focus on how important how being entrepreneurial is in building out economies. So this is something that we have to teach our children, not necessarily to encourage people to just be just to encourage people to get license for sell liquor. The whole concept of being self-made, going out and starting your own business, being business-minded. That's what I'm talking about, Mr. President. So I'm going to close shortly, but I just want to look at the bill in a bit more detail, because even though this bill seeks to modernize and make it easier for persons to acquire liquor license, not only for a little shop, but persons who engage in public entertainment and other catering business and such like, what it also points out a number of responsibilities that a person must have in order to maintain that liquor license. And if I can just look at clauses 27, because I have it here. Clauses 27, it looks very much at children. I'm very concerned about children minors. It brings into sharp focus this whole idea of selling alcohol to minors. I was here, I heard Senator Greenidge mention as a young person seeing, children going to shops to buy alcohol for their parents or for their father, for grandfather. Well, I've seen that too myself. Perhaps one of the younger males in this room, but I remember that as a child. I remember that as a young man growing up, seeing it wrapped up in newspaper and put in a place in a brown bag, like it magically becomes something else if it's wrapped in newspaper or a brown paper bag. You have to put a stop to that. So this bill brings back into focus this whole concept of not selling alcohol to minors. And not even the older minors, not even the 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds, but sometimes these little 10-year-olds that people may want to send to the shop. If that is still going on in Barbados, it needs to stop. It really needs to stop. I have no tolerance for that type of activity. I would not encourage it. And I'm glad that it was identified and outlined in this bill, and there are consequences if persons engage in that type of activity. There are also other responsibilities as it relates to this bill. Clause 27, well, clause 28, 29, and 30 looks at some of the responsibilities. But let me just look at 30, because one of the things that I've seen in my travels is that sometimes persons come into an establishment and they drink, they get drunk, get too drunk, and if you leave them, if you just leave them, they will just continue to drink themselves into a stupor. I think that a person has a moral and now a legal responsibility to not sell that person any more alcohol if you realize that the person is hurt. You have a legal responsibility to stop. No, I refuse to sell you alcohol because you appear to be too impaired, too drunk to continue drinking. And now it's set out in this outline in this particular piece of legislation, and that in my sense, to my mind, brings a good balance to it. So I support that as well. And the last thing I'm going to look at in the legislation, I think, is in clause 12, where they said, and I think that Senator Franklin would have alluded to that as well when he made mention of clause 12 and 11 of a person's right, the public's right, to object to the application of a new retail or entertainment license. Now, a rum shop or a bar or restaurant or what have you, a disco, if people still have those things. Those things do not pop up out of thin air. If someone's building a rum shop or building a shop or a restaurant or a food shop in the community, you tend to know. You tend to know sometimes long before the renovations, if it's an existing building, or long before the building is constructed, that's what it's going to be. So it's not going to sneak up on you, It's not something they're going to spring on you. So you have time to act. And that's the reality. Sometimes you look on at things in the paper and you don't realize it's a reality in the community. Something that is coming, you're going to know long before it comes. And you have the opportunity to put things in place to ensure if it's going to be noisy, it's going to be disruptive, and it's too close to where you live and you don't want it because you have an old lady in your house who's not well and can't take the noise, can't take the light, can't take whatever that activity would encourage around whatever that establishment would encourage around your community, then you have time in a real world situation to act on it. And that's the reality. I'm just making that point that it's not gonna happen overnight. It's not gonna spring up overnight. So I'm just gonna make that point quickly. Who want to refute that can, but I live in a real world and I've seen real things that I know that these things do not happen overnight. So as I close, I just want to say that I once again throw my full support behind this bill. And as we reopen this post-COVID period,
Mr. President, point of order.
Senator Franklin.
The senator is misleading the House. He just said that these things don't sneak upon you. He's telling this Senate and the country that people will be able to apply even before the people make the you'll be able to object before the people make the application. Sir, he's misleading us. It does nowhere in the bill. The bill says you have 7 days after it published on the website. Now he's telling me that you can know before. How you can know before the fellow's going, I'm fixing up my house? And he's saying to us that this bill is suggesting that you're going to be able to apply and make the application before the fellow apply. You're going to make the objection. So don't mislead us like that.
Thank you, Senator Franklin. No point of order. He's expressed.
As I was saying that as we reopen in this post COVID period, I truly hope that this bill, persons will see this bill as an opportunity to get the business back in order, and I hope that some of the challenges that I know some of the challenges that I know that many persons would have faced in the past in terms of investing their money and then having to wait and hope and pray that they get the necessary license will now be a thing of the past. So with those few words, Mr. President, I strongly support this bill and I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Senator Dr. Springer. Senator McConney.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this session now be suspended for lunch until 3 p.m.
The question is that this sitting be suspended until 3 p.m. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The sitting now stands suspended.